Our next speaker is an author and keynote speaker on business creativity, change, and global business. She has delivered over 2,000 presentations in more than 60 countries on 6 different continents. He is the author of 9 books, including The Idea Book, which was included in the 100 best business books of all time. Today, he will be sharing with us on the value of thinking differently. Introducing Frederick Harron. Frederick, please.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor to be the last person to finish this day. And I'm not going to be the first person to say this, but I also have to say this. In my job, I listen to hundreds and hundreds of speakers, and I cannot remember the last time I had so many speakers before me that were so prepared, who had such a strong message, and who presented in such a powerful way. I just have to say that as well. Can we just give a round of applause? But I also want to acknowledge something else. It is so common that we talk about encouraging the youth, helping the kids, the young, and so on. But it's so rare to come to a convention on this topic where the majority of the speakers are kids. Again, can we give one big applause for the organizers of this? I'm going to close for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to talk about the 2 main topics of this conference, because we had a lot of themes from the kids. But the theme, the overall theme, is innovation and international leadership. And those are 2 things I'm going to talk about, because those are 2 things that I've spent the last 20 years or so studying. So let's start with creativity and innovation. What is the definition of creativity? What's the definition of innovation? Or what is the definition of an idea? So I would like to give you my definition. It's a very simple definition. It goes like this. An idea is that one person takes 2 formerly known things and combines them in a new way. One person takes 2 formerly known things and combines them in a new way. I'm going to give you a very simple example. This is from a guy in Lithuania. He took 2 previously known things, he combined them. He took the concept of a sink, which is a previously known thing, and he took the concept of a urinal, which is a previously known thing. Now you take a sink and a urinal, you combine the 2, what do you get? Any creative people in the room? A sink and a urinal combined, what do you get? A sink above the urinal. Very good, that's exactly what it is. There it is. Now we have women in the room, and they usually don't understand how this works. So here's an illustration. First you pee. Then you wash your hands. Now the water used to wash your hands is now reused to flush your pee away. Is this a good or a bad idea? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yeah, almost everyone says this is a good idea. But why is it a good idea? Because it saves water. But not only that, not only do we save water, we save something else. Energy. Energy, very good. We save something else. Electricity, space, and time. We don't have to go to the sink. So here's one man who has the ability to look at 2 ordinary things, a sink and a urinal, and say, what happens if we combine them in an unordinary way? And he improves how men urinate by 5 different parameters. And that's all creativity is. All we have to do is take things that we know about and combine them in a new way. Now here's the problem. The problem is that everyone loves creativity, everyone loves new ideas, but most people are very bad at it. And the older we become, the worse we become at it. I've been speaking about creativity for 20 years. Never has there been more talk about how quickly the world is changing than right now. And the adults are just not able to handle it. I wrote my first book 20 years ago. It was about the internet in 1995. And you ask yourself, what's the common denominator between Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, the founders of Google, the founders of Yahoo? They all had their ideas when they were in university. They were young. They were old enough to have knowledge about all the things that were happening in the world, but they were young enough not to be stuck about how things have to be done. So they said, oh, here's the computer. Oh, here's the internet. Here's something new. We can now do things differently. That is the power of, that is the power of the youth. The power not to be stuck. But just 2 months ago, I was doing a speech in Munich for one of the big German car companies, and I showed them this picture. Because this is the first car 100 years ago, and obviously the people who did the first car, they were stuck in the concept of the horse carriage, right? So the first car looks just like a horse carriage, yes. But 100 years later, the car has evolved, but basically it is still this concept. But now everything is changing in the car industry. We have self-driving cars, we have electric cars, we have car sharing services, and we have the connected car with all of these computers. All of these are huge mega trends changing the car industry. But the old car companies don't know how to handle all these new things because they're so stuck in how a car used to look. So when I was speaking to the car people, the adult car people, I showed them this picture and I said, I was trying to push them, challenge them. I said, really? Come on, 100 years later, how much have you able to change? How much have you changed the car in 100 years? Really? And one guy said, well, we turned 2 guys around. But they are so stuck. Now, what I want to say to you is not how you're going to change the car industry. I'm going to talk about one specific change. One change that I think is absolutely crucial that kids understand, more importantly, that parents understand that the kids are now starting to look at. Because we talk a lot about our kids that have been digital natives. Oh, now they know the computers, they know the mobile phone. If I have a problem with my mobile phone, my kid can fix it. We talk a lot about how they understand technology. But we don't talk so much about how technology has changed the mindset of the kids. Because the purpose of technology, if you ask me, is to broaden our mind. And let's look what's happened in the world in the last few decades. 10,000 years ago, or if you're living in a rainforest in the middle of Amazonas, your worldview is your village. You know nothing about the world except what is outside your village because you have no technology except your 5 senses. But then we invented technology which made us see more of the world. We invented shoes so we could walk further. We invented taming the horse, we could ride further. And then slowly we invented new technologies and our world mentally grew. The printing press, the airplane, the train, the telegraph, boom, boom, boom. And every time we did that, the world grew. So, we went from living in a tribe to living in a village. From living in a village to living in a town. From living in a town to living in a kingdom. From living in a kingdom to living in a country. And the only reason we could do that is because mentally we now expanded our minds to think bigger, to think larger, be part of a larger community. But what we have to understand, what's happening now in the last 10, 20 years is taking off, is that we are now inventing technologies that make it possible for the first time in human history to have a global mindset. Because now we have invented internet, Skype, Facebook, cheap air travel, or cable news, or satellites. The next version of Google Earth will be real-time video in high definition of every place on Earth. So that soon, very soon, they're launching 34 satellites with cover the whole Earth. Next time there's a tornado in Houston, we can zoom in and we can look at a single person at what's happening with that person right there on Earth. Do you think that might change the way we look at Earth? Yeah. Yes. That means our kids are not only digital natives, they are also global natives, and they are the first generation who is. We think that we are, but we are not. We are stuck in a nationalistic mindset, and it blinds us as adults. I'm not saying it's bad to have a nationalistic mindset. I'm saying this. Just because I'm a man, I'm more than one thing. I'm a man, I'm Frederick the man. But then I got married. So I went from being just a man to also becoming a husband. I'm not less of a man because I also became a husband. I am more of a man because I became a husband. But I extended my reach as a human. Then we got kids. And I went from being a husband to becoming a father, and my world grew. I'm not less of a husband because I became a father. I'm more of a husband because I became a father. Then my kids started school. Now I am involved in the local community around my school. I'm not less of a parent because I'm now involved in school. Everyone understands this. And I'm not less of the local community because I'm also part of the nation. But I'm also not less of a nation. I'm not less a part of Singapore because I'm also a Swede. I care about Sweden and I care about Singapore. And the next generation, they are not. They will be man and woman, husband and wife, parents, part of the local community, part of the nation, but they will also, maybe primarily, identify themselves as human beings for the first time in human history. Now what happens when you do? So I'm going to give you 2 examples. First, the Swedish national team of cooking. This is the Swedish national team of cooking. Now, I don't know if you know this, but every country sends their best chefs to compete in like the Food Olympics. And we have famous countries like Thailand and China and India, famous for food. But this is from Sweden, and you know nothing about Swedish food. If I say Swedish food, what are you thinking right now? Meatballs, where? IKEA. We are famous for bad meatballs in a furniture store. That's what we are famous for. We are not famous for. When's the last time you said to your husband or your wife, honey, I feel like Swedish tonight? We are not famous for food. And yet, Sweden tend to score very high in the Food Olympics. We usually win the whole thing. We beat countries like Thailand and France and Italy. Huge food nation. How is this possible? So I met with them. And I asked them, how can we beat everyone? And they said, because the French chefs, they think that the French food is the best in the world. So they study everything they can about French cooking. But the Italians think Italian food is the best in the world, so they study everything they can about Italian cooking. And the Japanese say Japanese food is the best in the world, so they study everything they can about Japanese cooking. But the Swedish chefs, they know that Swedish food is not the best. So they leave Sweden. They go to Paris, they work in a 3-star Michelin restaurant, they learn everything they can about French cooking. Then they go to Italy, and they work in a 5-star hotel, and they learn everything they can about pasta for 6 months. Then they go to Tokyo, and they don't study for 7 years to become sushi master chefs, they study for 7 months, but they learn as much as they can about sushi. Then they go back to Sweden, and they learn everything they can about meatball. And then, as they said, we take everything that we have learned and we combine it. And we go to the Food Olympics and we do herring sashimi with lingonberry wasabi. We take the best of the Swedish cooking and the best of the Japanese cooking, we combine it in a way we haven't seen before. And that is what people do who have a global mindset. They pick up the best ideas regardless where they come from. They don't judge an idea based on how someone used to do something from their religion, or their culture, or their country. They base their idea on its merit. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? It doesn't mean you forget about your culture. It doesn't mean you forget about your national or your religion. It means you judge the idea on the merit of the idea. I'm going to end with an example which is very private to me, my own kids, who happen to be here in the back. I have 3 kids. Look at Maria. And my wife is Elaine, she's from the Philippines. So I'm from Sweden, she's from the Philippines, we got married, everything was fine, no culture clashes whatsoever. But then we had kids. And suddenly we have to decide, how are we going to raise our kids? Are we going to raise them Swedish way, or are we going to raise them Filipino way? That is 2 totally different ways of raising people. Or are we going to raise them Singaporean way, because they are born in Singapore. And they have lived their whole lives in Singapore. Now which one should it be?
What do you best of?
For the first time, I had to sit down and say to myself, what is the best way to raise a kid? Not the way I've been taught to raise a kid, what is the best way to raise a kid? And most couples that come from the same country or the same culture, they don't have this discussion. They say, this is how you raise a kid. We have to have a discussion. For example, in the Philippines, in Asia, you have respect for the elders. Yes? In Sweden, we don't. We have disrespect for the elders. So we decided we should go for the Filipino way. In the Philippines, they smack their kids. All the time. In Singapore, they say they don't smack their kids, but they smack their kids. In Sweden, we never smack our kids. I have never been hit by my dad. We don't smack, we just don't. So now, are we going to smack or not smack? Are we going to smack or not smack? I know, Mama spanks, Papa doesn't spank. That's going to be good. No, we did the Swedish way. We don't spank our kids. And then we had this wonderful discussion. Because in the Philippines, when it rains, you cannot go out because you will get sick. You get sick in the rain. It's the truth in the Philippines. In Sweden, if it snows, we tell our kids, go out and play. It's healthy for you, makes you strong. Now, what are we going to do if it rains in Singapore? Can they go out in the rain or can they not go out in the rain? Which one are we going to do? Right? Half in the rain, half not. So now we have to have discussion. I have to ask my wife, why do you think you get sick if you play in the rain? We are in Singapore, it's 32 degrees outside. That is hotter than it is in Sweden when it's not raining. And we don't get sick in the snow. And my wife said, you're right. Of course they should be allowed to play in the rain. So 1 week ago, it was raining. Do you remember that 1 week ago? It was pouring. And my kids came to me and they said, Papa, it's singing in the rain time. So they went out. All three of them. Naked, because in Sweden we bathe naked, okay? This is the Swedish way. And they were dancing in the rain, singing. I'm singing in the rain. I'm singing in the rain. For the glory of feeling that happy. So what we are teaching our kids is always, what is the best way of doing something in the world? And if you're a parent, I urge you to teach your kids to have an open mindset of all the cultures, all the ways we do things, and say, what is the best way of doing something? And if you're a kid, be curious about how things are done. And since we have so many Singaporeans, so many Indians in the room, you are probably more suited to this than anyone else. Because in Singapore and India, you are very open to many different cultures, many different mindsets, and many different ways of doing things. So I'm going to end my little speech with the mindset I want you to teach your kids. It is to think human and act humane. Pick up all the best ideas you can find in the world and come up with the best idea of solving the problems, regardless where that inspiration came from, and solve ideas for human beings, not for countries. Good luck with that, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry, for this speech. I do wish someone told my mom that, it's okay to not expect me. Kids don't agree.